Everybody got mics on? Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome to the January 21st meeting of the Merrimack Trustees of Trust Funds. First order of business is introductions. If we'll start on, I'm Chris Christensen, Chairman. If we start on my far left.
Tom Boland, Finance Director for the town.
Pat Heinrich, I'm one of the trustees.
Bill Wilkes, trustee.
And in the audience, you don't have a microphone, Liz Petritas, who's looking to become part of the board at some point in time. And our next order of business is the minutes of November 19th. Do we have a motion?
I will motion we accept the minutes of November 19th as written.
Any corrections, omissions? Second first, I guess. Okay, I'll second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Excuse me,
Yeah.
I want the minutes rewritten so that they're complete and accurate. That's why I didn't make a second. I can't approve these minutes as they are.
Okay, what's the problem?
We can start off with transfer of assets forms for the Bear Christensen Trust, received, completed, and given to Judith Knoll. Actually, the $25,000 was not given to the Cambridge Trust until December, not before this. Secondly, there is something about $10,000 additional. I want some information about that $10,000. When was it accepted by the town? Where did it come from?
It comes to us.
Who accepted it?
We
Did we have a public hearing because it's over
No.
$5,000?
No, we don't. When the original, first of all, the paperwork was done on whatever date it was done.
What
And
paperwork?
The ones that you just referred to, the transfer of assets. So that was done. When they actually get the money, it takes time for them to send the paperwork to wherever the previous custodian was and get it back. That could take 3 days, it could take a week, but it requires no action on our part.
Well, it says the transfer was completed and given, but you just said
Yes.
we didn't get it back. So it wasn't
They
completed.
didn't get the money because it takes time for the transfer to occur. Checks clear and whatever other internal things happen between two financial institutions.
I still don't know where that $10,000 came from.
That's a second issue.
Well, I have other issues that I can go down through. And
The
it brings
the
to,
$10,000 has not been, it was received and deposited. Part of the program when we take money on anything like this, like the Gibson Scholarship, for example, we get money on that every year, $5,000, $6,000, $7,000. There's no separate public hearing because the original public hearing said take additional monies.
okay, so did the original public hearing on the Bear Trust say that there was going to be additional money?
Yes.
No, it didn't. I went to the minutes of the trustees of the trust of the library, the town council, that were supposed to be attached to the minutes of the September meeting, or the October meeting, but even that's not mentioned in the November minutes, that we had a discussion and I refused to approve the minutes until we said something about the town council. That wasn't attached here. Then there's something that you sent an email around about some issues that I raised, which you said were raised. Those issues aren't in the minutes. The minutes are not complete.
Okay.
And that brings up another whole problem, which is the fact that we are ignoring the right to know law, because when you send out minutes, you want us to reply back to you. That's a conversation between two members of the board. That's a majority. That's a violation of the right to know law.
I think you're misunderstanding. It's more a matter of just, I have received the minutes. It's not a matter of,
Not when I make a
Discussion.
correction and you and I have a discussion back and forth, which happened, and just a response appears to the public in a majority of 3. The right to know, I trained library trustees in boards of 3, and they found it very difficult to function because we have to be careful about even a conversation that we have walking out downstairs, 2 of us, that could be construed as a meeting. We absolutely have to be careful of it. And it doesn't matter, and I have 20 years of experience at the State House with state boards on that.
okay, and I've had many years of training from Terry Knowles and
So
others
have I,
as well.
actually. And I've taught next to Terry at library
Good,
trustee
okay.
trainings.
Okay.
And that's one of the things that Terry used to stress, is that a board of 3 has to be absolutely, positively pristine and aware that two members talking could be viewed as a meeting. You're right, a social contact, not. But walk out of this meeting and talking about something, two members, it could be construed as a meeting. We need to be careful of that. So no, we cannot reply to anybody. I can't send an email and get it back. That's a conversation, and that's been tested.
Okay? Anything else?
I will bring up the things that I have concerns about, actually, because I looked at, and I wanted to talk about it later when you talk about the Bear Christians one, but actually, the town council accepted an amount of $25,000, of which $3,000 was supposed to go into the income fund, and I understood that. However, you continually said 24 plus 3, which is 27,000. So the numbers don't match.
They never will. It was invested in equities, and the dollar number changes on a daily basis.
You know, I understand that. But we need to make a record of it, that this is the actual amount that you gave to the trust on this date. Because one of the things you told me when I became a trustee is the records were a mess. And is there any wonder that they are a mess if we don't make sure they're accurate and complete? The town council accepted $25,000, but somehow it's much bigger than that, including this $10,000 that came in that said income $5,000 and principal $5,000. We don't have a document on that, nothing. But that's why the records are a mess.
I'm not sure what document I think that would be.
How about a motion in the trustees' minutes that we've accepted the additional $10,000 given by, and this is what's to happen to it, because there is no record in the trust fund, the
Right,
town
and
council.
today would be the first opportunity to do that, because our last meeting was November 19th.
But why was it given to the bank without us accepting it?
We
You
do-
gave it to the bank.
We do that with any deposit
That
we
doesn't make it
receive.
right, and that makes a problem.
Well, we can't sit, let me give you a different example. On December, pick a date, 25th, 31st, sometime at the end of December every year, we get a check from the Watson Foundation, 2 checks actually, and we deposit them. There's no hearing, there's no, because when we get money, we're supposed to deposit it. We can't just hold on to it for a month until we get our next meeting.
But the fact, as you just said, is there's an instrument that says that money is coming in annually. So we have a
There's no
record
instrument that says that.
from the trustee, from the Watson Foundation.
Right.
It's discretionary. I mean, they don't have to do that on an annual basis. They choose to do that, but it's discretionary on their part.
And you have here the Watson scholarships as a deposit and the Watson Lego League, $1,000.
Right,
That's what came in?
yes.
There's the document.
All right.
You're gonna bring it up
And
today.
Bill and I are trying to approve it, and you're saying, no, I don't want to approve it.
Well, no, I don't want to approve it until last month's minutes are rewritten. And I know
I don't know how I
I'm-
can rewrite last
can
month's
listen to the tape.
minutes
You
for
can listen
something
to-
that hadn't occurred until the end of December.
Which is what? The transfer of that money that didn't occur till December that you told us happened in
You're
November?
talking about two different things. We're talking about the
Well,
Watson
that's the
Fund, we're
problem
talking
here.
about the.
I'm
All
trying
right.
to understand, and I'm running into walls of that's what we've always done, or you don't understand. I know I don't understand. I'd like to understand.
Okay, we have a
Can we,
motion.
can we table them? Okay, I'm not sure of the
I'm only
procedure,
one.
but
You guys are a majority. If
could-
you want to accept it, fine.
You made the motion. Do you want to continue the motion or withdraw it?
can I withdraw the motion, and can we table accepting the minutes and have Pat submit to us all the corrections she believes are necessary so that we can review those, and then next month potentially accept the minutes? Is that Robert's rules, or?
Yes, that is. You've withdrawn the motion. He has to withdraw his second.
I'll withdraw the second. So we have a new motion.
The new motion is that we table the minutes of November 19th and have Pat Heinrich submit corrections that she believes are necessary, and we can review those at the next meeting and either accept the minutes as corrected or further discuss them as presented.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Nay. Motion carries 201.
210.
I'm sorry, 210, you're right, thank you. Okay, correspondence that came in, scholarships. We had several scholarship requests, and as of the time this agenda was printed, we had paid the Gibson Scholarship and 4 of the Watson Scholarships. As of yesterday, the Greenleaf Scholarship request came in, and that was paid. Deposits, we had another additional $10,000 come to the Bear Christensen Fund, split 50-50 principal and interest. That deposit was made. Watson Scholarships, we had $5,000 for that and $1,000 for the Lego League. That was deposited. Town Capital Reserve Fund, we had $2,370,000 that we deposited.
Can we,
Any
just,
questions on any of those things?
can you just explain a little more on the split of the Bear Christensen principal and interest? What the donor's intention is there, or?
That was the intention, to split it 50-50.
Again, where's the document? Who's the donor?
I'm the donor,
I thought you were, but
but there may be others. Either way, we do the same thing with the Gibson Fund, we always have. The donor has the option of specifying where he or she wants the money to go. That doesn't all go into the minutes. Every transaction that we do doesn't go into the minutes. Technically, minutes only need motions and votes.
actually, minutes are supposed to have discussion about what was discussed, the topics of discussion, and that's in the statute.
Okay. So, the next item on the agenda is fees, principal and interest. For many, many years, we had no fees. And then we changed financial institutions and started paying some fees. The tradition had been, because we had bequests that said the income from which shall be used for, and never specified that principal could be expended, we chose to only expend for fees out of income. At the November meeting, we had discussion with Cambridge Trust that suggested that other towns are splitting the fees from between principal and interest on the assumption or the premise that the management institute is managing both the principal and the interest. It didn't seem to make a lot of difference, but I looked at the cemetery plot figures when they came out after we paid the Last Rest Cemetery. And what's happening on these very small accounts, there's a principal, pick a number, $3,000, but there may only be $200 in the income side. So to take fees out of that based on a $3,200 total overweights what comes out of the income side. So I talked to, or I emailed to Audrey Blodgett, and she said that, and I don't necessarily interpret it this way, but I'll take her reading and the DRA's reading, that RSA 31:38, which is the one that governs financial institutions in a management capacity, and says you can take the fees, and they interpret that to mean the fees can come out of both principal and interest. She said there is no guidance on whether you do 60/40, 50/50, 90/10, anything else, but she says most towns do 50/50. So I think there's some merit to that. I talked to Cambridge Trust, and they said we could do that starting with the January reports, which haven't been filed yet because January isn't over yet. So we could do it for the half year now and then continue it
So
at whatever point in the future.
So which one of us is going to review the original documents? Because several of the original documents say the principal is to be maintained forever. And if that's the case, then we have to leave the fees out of income.
That's not the interpretation that DRA is making.
And who's Audrey Blodgett?
She's the Charitable Trust Division Administrator.
Thank you, that's the name I needed.
She's retiring at the end of the month, by the way.
Okay.
So, as I look back at it, if I gave money to the town for the purpose of the school in 1875, it would have been deposited in a bank. There wouldn't have been a lot of investment options. The bank pays 2%, and they might have maybe made 5%, who knows? All of their fees are kind of wrapped up in one ball of wax, and then they pay you something on the side. So if you look at it from that perspective, it makes sense to me that, or I understand where DRA is coming from. That says, yes, you're paying them, you can pay them a management fee on principal. And yes, we've had the same question about bequests, because that's why we weren't paying it out of bequests, but I don't think it's gonna be very cumbersome to separate out this bequest and that bequest and the,
I mean, that makes perfect sense to me. From, if you had, whatever, pick a number, $100,000, and you gave it to a trust department to manage, and they said, you know, that's, if I give them $100,000, that's principal.
yeah.
And they have to charge a fee on that. So I think doesn't matter if it's income or principal. If you're asking somebody to manage it, then
The
they.
the fee is on the total.
Exactly. It doesn't. So I kind of understand what they're saying at DRA, and I think it makes sense.
But I'm still uncomfortable with the fact that if the bequest specifically says to maintain the principal.
Well, you are maintaining the principal.
And that's, I just want
But
to
you have to
confirm that.
pay somebody. If I have somebody mow my lawn, I can't say, well, you know, do it for free.
Well,
So,
but to Chris's point, in the example that he gave, we didn't have a management company then. The trustees of the trust fund, or what's his name, Johnson, was managing it, and for free. So, I mean, at that time, those original trusts, they were being managed for free.
and that was
Actually, it was
probably,
Larry Hodkinson.
and that probably wasn't prudent at the time.
Oh, but I still think if the bequest says specifically to maintain the principal, I just want to confirm that we're not below the principal. Because you're right, there's interest that's coming in on that principal, and there's also capital gains possibly that come in on that principal.
I mean,
As
if
long
you-
as the original,
If you buy a mutual fund and the mutual fund publishes, hey, our return was 8% for a given calendar year, there's a management fee that's been subtracted. That's their net return, that's not the gross return. The gross return might have been 8.3%, picking a number out of my hat. And, you know, you netted 8%, so there is a management fee on that principal.
I just don't want to jump until we're sure that all of the other funds are accurate. So,
Oh, I think they are. The bequests, basically, they do not say the phrase you're using, principal not to be, it just says the income from which.
no, actually, I've seen one that says the bequest, the principal to be retained.
Right, retained does not mean not managed.
Well, managed and keeping that much money in them, we're supposed to maintain the principal. I can show you at least one document that I've seen that says that.
But if you had $100,000 that was given in 1970,
Yeah,
and it appreciated to $350,000,
the principal's been maintained.
that $100,000,
Yeah, I don't have a problem.
without
because-
getting into adjustments for inflation and all that sort of thing, but you have more than what was originally given.
I don't have a problem
But
with
now
that.
you've got somebody that's gonna manage it for a fee. You've gotta pay them from somewhere. You can't like pull that out of thin
Yeah,
air.
No, I don't have a problem with that. I just want to confirm that all of the various accounts are at or above the original
Oh,
principal.
yes. Some of them we don't know.
Well, that's the problem,
What
and
the
that's
original
what I'm
request-
fighting for, is to be sure that we have documentation, because we have things we don't know. Going forward, I want to be sure we have things that we know.
If you go back and look, pick a number, 10 years ago, all of the principal accounts are greater now than they were 10 years ago. They're certainly greater than they were in 1845 or 1895, whenever they were given. Now, at some point in time, I want to go back to cemeteries as an example. You get cemetery funds, we publish a report for every grave
Yes, I know.
once a year. And if you look at those, for whatever reasons, Audrey and I talked about this, we have no idea how this ever happened, but you could have a gravesite that was funded in, the date on the report says 1925, and another one funded in 1945. And lo and behold, the principal number on the report is the same. I'm gonna guess, I have no way of knowing because I wasn't here then, but at some point in time, when we started putting these things on computers instead of manual, everything got rounded off to the 8th decimal point, and that triggered a point where all of those numbers match. Are they accurate? Probably not. Some of them may be. We just don't know what happened 50 or 100 years ago. And trying to go back and find that is not something in our records. Perpetual care would be a perfect example, because the money prior to, well, it was up to 1925, 55. 55, I guess, was the last money given to us for perpetual care. And then Last Rest Cemetery kept the money after that. So, I'm in favor of telling Cambridge Trust to do a 50-50 split. If you think it should be 60-40 or some other number, we have no guidance on that.
Are there any concerns about, I'm just thinking about maybe some of these smaller perpetual care amounts, if we enter in a period of declining stock market value and you're taking fees, is there any concern that you might eventually deplete a principal balance and no longer be able to have that going forward?
I don't think so. In 2000, when I first came on board, 2007, 8, someplace around there, we had very low income, not principal, but very low income. And we did not pay for care for that particular year. Last Rest absorbed it. And the next year, things started coming around again. And if the bill was $60 and we had 40, we didn't pay 40, we just paid nothing. And then as time went on, the dividends continued coming in and so forth, and the money was sufficient and has been sufficient ever since. But I don't see a situation where at 75 basis points, the principal would be diminished to a 0 point. As an aside to that, my understanding from cemetery trustee meetings or training is that if Last Rest, for example, eventually ran out of money, the town has an obligation to take it over. Anybody else? Got a motion? Okay, I'll move that we advise Cambridge Trust to take their management fees out of principal and interest on a 50-50 basis.
I'll second it.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Pat?
I'm opposed.
Okay, motion carries 2-1-0. Next item on the agenda is town report. The only thing for the town report is I sent you copies of everything that is going into the town report. I think there's 3 pages, one of text, then a table listing all of the final balances of capital reserve funds and scholarships, and then a condensed version of the MS9 for all of the other common funds. And those are basically the same things that we approved in September, reformatted a little bit so that it could fit into one page. So for example, there are columns that say purpose and how invested. There's a line that says common funds, and purpose says school or education or whatever it happens to say. There's a list that the state provides that we have to use. But those columns are basically unneeded. The one that says capital gains dividends, nobody even knows what that is. So those columns are hidden for the town report, the ones that are unnecessary to the report, so that we can fit it into an 8.5 by 11 page. But they're all on the state report. They're all on the rest of the things that we hand out.
I think that, this is just a general comment. I think they're very difficult for the average person to even look at and understand. I don't know why we don't have like some little basic report that shows about 3 or 4 columns, and then if with an asterisk underneath it that says, if you would like full detail, go to X, Y, and Z. Have we ever thought about that? If I'm Joe taxpayer and I look at the annual report, I just want kind of a summary. I'm not looking for every piece of detail there.
Yeah, that's basically what we're doing with the capital reserve funds. When we just,
Can't we do the same thing with the other?
we could.
Because all people are looking, I looked at it too, and I thought, you look at one goes this way and one goes that way, and oh my God. If they're all in the same place and the same format for all of them. And if you're only gonna show the ending balance,
I think on the common funds, I would consider doing income and principal, because if somebody wants to look at that and says, okay, we got $3 million or $300,000 available for this, when in fact what's available is $50,000 in accumulated income, and the other is principal to be retained, that can be misleading.
well, I like that thought, and I'm just wondering, the date established, you have a date here with nothing in the header on this one page. And is there a reason we need to know that? Don't we just need to know the name of the fund? Because I was thinking beginning balance and ending balance. And
I'm
certainly.
not sure which, you're looking at
This
capital
is
reserve fund
capital
page?
reserve, yeah, it starts
Yeah.
with the date, and what you're looking for, what you headed it with is for the fiscal year ending June 30. And you're right, that's all people care about is what's there now. So maybe it would be 3 columns, which is, as you said, principal, income,
What's
ending
available?
balance. Yeah, what's
Yeah.
available.
Yeah,
And I don't know that people need to know the date that it was established. That's terrific for us and some of the things I'm working on, but you're right, this form, this is the one with all the stuff across that you eliminated all the columns. And I think you're right. Let's make it easier for people to read.
okay, well, we'll consider that next September.
Okay?
Well, pardon me.
Because I was gonna ask you why there were 2 formats and why I had to change my book around, and you're talking about it's what people want to read. They just want to know how much.
Yeah, and it's not like we're trying to not, give them the full report. If they wanna look at the full report, they can come down.
It's available,
It's
yeah,
on, it's on the website.
Yeah,
yeah.
If you go to other towns and look at their town reports, most of them don't have the volume of, or the amount of funds that we have. And some of those reports are very minimal and basically say, you wanna know what's here? Come down to town hall and take a look. And I was always upset by that practice, because I always felt in the annual report that people are gonna pull this stuff out. I go back, I may be one of the few. I got a bookshelf this long of annual reports, and I go back and refer to those sometimes.
I go to the library instead,
Well, okay.
because they have them.
Yeah,
But I understand what you're saying, because I used to keep them too, and that's why I go to the library now.
but as I said, there's probably very few people in town who do that.
maybe you should
The,
do.
the other,
maybe you
the
should
other thing
donate
on that
those
is,
to the Historical Society.
yeah, not very good if you want reference. The other thing, when you ask about the year established, if you know the year established, and you can go back in the town minutes and look at the capital reserve fund motion or warrant article and find out in detailed purpose.
I don't know that we need it in this report, but I agree with you about the minutes, because that's what I did, at least for the school stuff. I went back to get the capital reserve funds for the school, because I've got those. I've
Yeah.
got the motion and I've got the vote. But I just think you're looking at start, income, and then the ending amount, and that's a great. And I'm gonna abstain on this, because this report is not from me, it's from the 2 of
There's
you.
no vote on this, it's already been filed, it's
I'm
gone to the
just-
town, it's
I just brought it up for discussion.
yeah.
Thank you. I agree
Yeah.
with you, actually, so.
We can fine tune it in the next several months.
Bank statements came out in a new format. It isn't anything we have a vote on, but I just want to find out if there's any concerns about it. The new statements list holdings pretty much alphabetically, whereas the old one had a sector analysis, which I liked, and the listings were alphabetically by sector. So it was nice to be able to look up the sector and say, okay, here's the IT column, and here's the energy column, and here's the manufacturing or industrial, whatever. I kind of like that, because we also had a pie chart that showed our balance from a sector perspective.
I mean, I like that too, and that's what Fidelity does really nicely. I mean, I don't know what we can do.
Well, we can just voice an opinion.
Yeah.
But I didn't know if anybody had the same opinion I did, or, but I think,
It gives you a quick overview of how balanced you are, which is, to me, is very important. Like, for example, right now in the stock market, technology companies are going down, but energy companies are going up.
Yep.
For example, so if I look at a pie chart and it says, hey, we have 25% in energy, 25 in technology, 25 in industrial, 25 in something else, that's 100%. You can you can say, well, that's pretty balanced, but if we have 75 in technology and 25 in the other, then you say, well, geez, we're overweight in technology.
Yeah.
We should bring that up with the Cambridge Trust and say, well, you know, what's your thinking there? So, to your point, I like that
The
type.
sector analysis.
Yeah,
and-
the sector
And the colored
analysis.
pie charts and the rest, yeah. Pat, any? I know
I'm
you
still
haven't-
having
you
a hard
haven't-
time
haven't
reading
been
all
looking
of
at
them,
these things
so-
for a long time.
So,
I stopped taking my Fidelity stuff, I just do it online.
Well, I mean, I do look online too, but if you drill, it's easy to drill down and get
Yeah.
that information.
All right, well, I will convey that to them next time we have any kind of a significant conversation. Okay. Next meeting is location. Just wanted to double check, we had this discussion a while back when only this room was open, and the memorial room was not available because they didn't want to have to clean it frequently. We aren't doing the projections on the screen that we used to do for management purposes. But in some instances, the memorial room is a little different atmosphere. Does anybody care one way or the other, whether we meet upstairs or downstairs?
I mean, I personally think this is a better room because the memorial room, you can get people walking through there to get coffee or accidentally opening the door and saying, oh, excuse me.
Yep.
I didn't know there was a meeting going on. I mean, this is kind of a little,
You're to the end of the hall and you don't get interrupted.
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
exactly. I agree with that. Anybody else have anything? Pat, you haven't met in the memorial room with us.
actually, I have. That's the meeting he was on the phone.
Oh, okay.
But I mean, if this isn't available, I'm fine with the memorial room.
Okay, well,
I
I think
would-
we just stay here. That's certainly easier for the TV crew and so forth, so we'll just leave that.
Sometimes we have a big crowd and this one will accommodate more people. That was a joke.
Next meeting planned for questioning February 18th and March 18th. Are those okay with everybody?
I'm okay with February 18th. Honestly, I think March 18th will be a conflict for me. But I probably could be available remotely,
Okay,
so I'm not sure changing that makes any sense at this point.
okay. Pat?
Friday mornings were real good for me. Like, yeah. Yeah, the only one is,
Okay. Other dates, I just listed some of town meetings coming up, school district meetings coming up, MVD meetings coming up. Those are the dates as we know them at this point. And I think that's pretty much it, unless there are miscellaneous items that anybody wants to discuss that were not anticipated by the agenda.
you sent out an email to all of us, which we couldn't discuss until we come to this
Right.
meeting.
Yep.
And after I got this email, I felt, I disagreed with you on capital gains. And I was in a position of either needing to call, and I didn't know who it was at the charitable trust, identify myself and say, this is what they're doing, they tell me this is legal. The way I read the law and the court decision about capital gains is different. And since I didn't want to call and do that without talking to you first, I contacted Paul McKelly and asked for a legal opinion from the town's attorney.
Okay,
In theory, we should go into non-public session, but the fact is, the town attorney says, I don't believe that having a separate income account changes the obligation to treat capital gains and losses on the income account by sending them back to the principal. To the extent that Merrimack's investment policy allows capital gains to be treated as expendable income, the policy likely needs to be changed. I encourage the Merrimack trustees of the trust fund to speak with the charitable trust unit to review how capital gains, all capital gains, are treated and discuss ways to revise your policy and procedure.
Okay. I don't think that's anything that shouldn't be discussed in public.
Okay?
I don't know why that would go to a non-public meeting.
Because it's a legal opinion, but,
Well, if he were here, or she, and they were discussing in a meeting format, then, yeah, there's an excuse for calling that a non-meeting. But in terms of open discussion here, I don't think.
a review of the
I think
statute.
I think there's very, very little that trustees do that can justify a non-public meeting.
Regardless, a review of the statute is very clear that capital gains on income go back to the principal. And this is income, whether it's in a separate fund or not, this is income. And the statute says income, capital gains, you keep the interest, but capital gains go back to the principal.
You got a number on that?
Yes, I'm not here, but I do.
Oh, okay.
I will be glad to share it. But see, again, when I send an email, I would like to suggest, if it's okay with Tom, that we have a buffer, so that if I want something sent out to you guys, he's the buffer, or maybe Becky, that we can send things back. Because we have a problem when we're going back and forth between meetings.
I think.
I'd like to just walk through this though with an example. So I buy the Vanguard Health Care Fund and I invest whatever, $10,000. And at the end of the year, Vanguard, because that's a basket of different securities. How many it is, I don't know off the top of my head. But they make money, okay, they had Pfizer in their portfolio, and they sell Pfizer for a handsome profit. So they have capital gains there that's proportionally divided up by your ownership share. So are you saying that, and there's an income piece of that because Pfizer has a dividend.
There is.
So,
But are you a
but
trustee? Are
me
you a
as
trust
an
fund?
investor or as a town, because
But
we
see,
had.
that's the difference.
Let me finish. We had a gain, two forms of a gain. We had a capital gain because they sold something at a profit and they distributed that to us, and we had an income that was made up of not only Pfizer, but other things that were in that portfolio. You're saying that the statute says that I can't spend that profit I made that they distributed to me?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that yours is private. This is a trust fund, a
I'm
municipal
talking about the
trust fund.
town.
The
I'm talking
town.
about the town. I'm not talking about my personal.
Okay.
Obviously, I
it's-
can spend
it's-
anything
it's
I
in the
want on
law.
my
It's-
personal.
It's in the law, and actually, if you read the.
Well, I would challenge that.
And if you read the
Because-
thing that's in the Attorney General's, the handbook, there's a Supreme Court decision from 1966 that says, was it 1966? But there's a Supreme Court decision that they say that capital gains on the income go back to the principal. And it's on the Attorney General's website right now, which may be an easier way to find the statute.
Well, I'm not
But I
going-
went back looking for the statute, and I went through the statute, and that's what it says. For the municipal funds, and that's what it says.
So if we're,
I'm not sure we're municipal funds, but be that as it may.
so if we're supposed to, somebody gives us money, bequest, gives us a bequest to improve the playgrounds at all the town's schools. And they give us a certain amount of money, and over time that money grows, and some of it comes back. Pretty much the example I just laid out. We can't spend any of that money to improve a playground at Reed's Ferry School.
Let me find the Attorney
That
General's
doesn't make
handbook.
much sense to me. I would challenge that.
Yeah, we've been doing this way for as long as I can remember. I was first on the Board of Trustees in 1990. And the Attorney General's office, the Charitable Trust Division, the DRA, everybody was aware of what we were doing as part of the annual reports that we've been filing with them every September for the last, way before 1990. So I think there's probably something different going on there than what you're reading into it. Certainly the Attorney General's office and the DRA are well aware of how Merrimack and other towns manage their funds. And if there had been problems with that, I think they would have let us know in, 1985 or whenever the previous trustees first started investing in equities.
My specific question to the attorney was, does placing trust fund income in a separate fund eliminate the need to apply any capital gains on the income fund to each original principal fund? And he said no. I don't believe that changes the obligation to treat capital gains or losses as principal, regardless of whether invested single or part of a common fund. And because we've always done it that way, doesn't mean it's right.
But things can be clarified.
They can be, and that's what
challenged.
I'd like to do,
Yeah,
is
and
clarify.
challenged.
Oh, they can be challenged too.
Yeah.
But I was in a position where I couldn't contact you because that's a right to know obligation, or violation.
And like every attorney, everything,
Yeah.
one attorney doesn't, unfortunately, in the legal profession,
I know.
there's not, it's not like mathematics. There's a lot of opinions.
Yeah, everybody has one.
And I will have to say that over the years of the last years, pick a number, 10 years, I have had several instances where the attorneys have voiced an opinion that I certainly disagreed with, and as it turns out, they were not 100% accurate. So,
Yeah, maybe we just need to do some further homework on that.
certainly, our experts at Cambridge Trust have no problem with it.
But see, they're not lawyers. That's the problem.
Well, I don't know that. I'm sure they have plenty of lawyers on staff.
Yeah, I'm sure they have some lawyers. Are we done with that topic?
I think so.
Because there was some talk, and I don't know if anybody's approached you on this, Chris, but there was some talk about a new playground that they want to construct handicap accessible and state-of-the-art at Reed's Ferry. And there's a effort with private residents to raise funds to do that. And I guess I don't know all the details, but I guess it's like $120,000 project, and let's say they're at 90,000 or something like that. And I had suggested that they might approach the trustees to maybe bridge the gap or contribute something to that. Had you heard anything about that?
I have not heard anything of that
Okay.
in our official correspondence.
They were approaching the Rotary Club, and that's why I bring it up.
Yeah.
Is this the parent group that's doing it on its own?
I believe
I
it's
was
a-
gonna say, we just had a budget meeting with the Reed's Ferry principal yesterday, and that wasn't mentioned anyway.
I believe it's a parent group, yes. And they had
Yeah.
approached the Rotary Club.
We do, and in fact, we've still got some bills, we haven't received the bills yet. We still got some bills to pay when we get them on the gymnasium projects that are outstanding. And I only bring that up in part because we're paying for something there that is not wholly academic. Recreation, health, those kinds of things are part of a more global approach to education. So I have no problem with that on the gymnasium side. I don't know that we could give money to a parents group. If the school is running the project,
Yeah.
and the school came to us and said, you know, we're doing this and this, and we need more beakers for the chem lab, or we need more swing sets for the playground, I think that's fine. But I don't think we can do something for an individual parents group. And how they affiliate with the school is something I'm not aware of. So, like I say, if the school came and said, we're sponsoring this project with them, and we wrote a check to the school or to the vendor on their request, the invoice has to come from the school, then I think we could do it.
Yeah.
That's an
Believe me, I have
interesting-
no connection
Does
to,
that sound good to you?
I'm just thinking about the fact that I happen to be involved with the PTTF, and I know that at Wedge's Thorntonsbury, and they're doing a playground too. And
oh, I'm sorry, I said Reed's Ferry, it's Thornton's Ferry.
Yeah, and I know
Yeah.
the PTTF is in
I
a
meant
couple of,
Thornton's Ferry, I'm sorry.
and when I know they're putting together a playground, and we were talking about last night, some of the parts and pieces of it. But it's certainly done with school notice, but not as part of the school budget. But you bring up an interesting point about how they're connected, because certainly the teachers and the principal and whatever attends those meetings.
Sure.
Um,
When we do, I'm trying to think of another example.
I mean, if you wanna look into that further, Pat, it was, I don't know a lot of details, but I can find out more, but it was they approached the Rotary Club for a
Yeah.
donation, and that's how I first heard of it.
And they certainly can't do anything without permission from the
From the school.
school. So, I mean, when you talk about a connection, they can't put anything there without permission from the school to go in and deal with it. And in fact, there was some discussion was asking the school district to pay for some of the preparation. And maybe that's the route to take to get additional funds. Because there was some talk
Yeah, I
about
mean,
that.
if their equipment costs are 90,000 and the prep is 30,000.
That's yeah.
Maybe there's an angle there.
And it's certainly an educational purpose, 'cause but yeah, I'll be glad to talk to the powers to be to figure out what's going on with that or wherever.
Well, I think to me, that's the bottom line. We can't give money to a private organization.
Right.
But if the school comes to us and asks for, then we can consider it under whichever funds they're.
The Gage
are
Lawrence is
appropriate.
actually educational. In fact, that's one they're supposed to appropriate and spend yearly, the income.
They're all designated as yearly, pretty much. We went to the school board and the superintendent many years ago and said, you know, they were giving the money in June, and at the time it was about $25,000 or $30,000. And when they just said, this is the income from last year, here it is, $25,000, and the school said, that's great, we can't spend it.
They have to appropriate it.
Well,
They have to put it as part of their budget as expected revenue.
either way, they couldn't spend it at that point. It went into surplus, which then came back to the town to offset taxes.
Well, there's certainly a better way.
And that's why we said, well, okay, we will allocate the money, and you can spend it as needed, and we will hold it on your behalf until such time as you need it. And they were very happy to do that. The same thing has happened with the library, where they say, we used to withhold 10% a year.
Yes, I know.
And then and I said, you know, I'm not sure, the bequest says the money to be paid to. And they said, well, okay, just don't pay us then. We'll hang on to it, and when we need it, we'll ask you for it. So, that's what's pretty much happened. And it makes a lot more sense in terms of being invested with other funds for better diversity of investment than just putting it into CDs, which is mostly what the library does now, which pay, 1.5%.
Well, they have to maintain the principle. That was in the will.
Anything else from anybody?
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you, and it is 10 o'clock. I'll second.
You can just declare adjourned.
I know, but we don't do that here. We've always taken a vote. So 3-0-0, or are you gonna abstain or do something different?
I'll be in favor. Can I ask, how come the Bear Christensen Trust is listed date of creation in our hands